There might be calibrations. I would call it calibrations, so dialing something up, dialing it down, and then mainly it's about capturing performance. And so I think that was the directorial process, was hiring the right people and trusting them.
Life finds a way.
Life's not fair, is it?
Life moves pretty fast.
Life is a bank.
Busy living.
What we do in life?
Way of life.
Life is pain.
Choose life and hanging around. To live would be an awful big adventure.
Welcome to the Movie of Your Life with Richard Roeper. Today we are talking about a movie that takes us back to one of the most tense moments of the Cold War, the 1986 Reykjavik Summit.
You picked a house in Iceland?
Perfect for security.
Good to see you, Mr. President. You're early. Always looking for the advantage.
Today we have Michael Russell Gunn and Aya Cash. The movie, The Brink of War, opening this weekend. We have a lot to talk about. Rich, tell us more about who we are chatting with today. We are thrilled to have these guests.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to start off just by welcoming Michael and Aya. It's a thrill to talk to both of you. Big fan of the movie, and I have watched your work and enjoyed it for many years now. And it's been a thrill to see you in so many different roles, just knocking it out of the park. Just terrific work.
Thank you.
Michael, let's talk about the whole premise for this film. For people who don't know, you can describe it better than I can. Can you walk us through where the film takes place, what point in history, and why it was so important for you to make the movie?
The super simple version, and I'll break it down as quickly as I can, is just that this is the true story of a meeting between Reagan and Gorbachev that happened in 1986 in a tiny little house in Iceland that led directly to the end of the Cold War. It was the beginning of the end. And why I wanted to do it was because I felt like, these days we've gotten really good at arguing, not as good at listening. And I wanted to try to figure out how these two, who had every reason to disagree, were able to find a way forward. And so that was really what the film was about. It's what I hope audiences take away from it. And that's why I made it.
It's kind of astonishing, Michael. I've been around a lot longer than you have. I remember this, and to think that this was in '86. If you made a movie in the '80s, it would be about something that happened during World War II. It's 40 years ago, so right. For a lot of viewers, this is the stuff of Wikipedia or documentaries. They know nothing about this. So I think, for one thing, it's entertainment, but I think it's also really valuable for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, and the fact that you had two men who disagreed about just about everything, except for the one thing, which was, we need to come to some sort of agreement here, or we could be facing extinction. I think that was just a great message that you got through with the film.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, it was a kind of thunderstrike moment when, I was reading the transcript and there's this line that we put in the movie that's, for probably the only time that, at least that I know of in human history, that, they were two people in a room to decide if there would be peace or war in the whole world. And so, luckily they found a way to peace, but it could have gone the other way. I think we take history in hindsight as something that was the way it was always going to be. We were always going to figure it out. But I think that's very clearly not true. And so there's plenty of examples where it's not. And so I think that was something to really capture.
For you, Aya, having a background in, we've seen you on television, we've seen you on Broadway, and now this in the film. Is this something because you and Michael had worked together maybe with Aaron Sorkin in previous projects? Was this something that, tell us why this project resonated most for you and why you chose to take this on?
Well, first and foremost, no, Michael and I did not know each other, but he wrote just the most beautiful letter to me, saying that he wanted me to do the role and that he'd sort of written it for me. And that felt, I mean, that doesn't happen very often. And it was just so moving and sweet to get that sort of letter. So that was one checked box. Then, of course, shooting in Iceland, which I'd never been to, and that was nice. And then, of course, the script was incredible. I mean, I think this script was a script that a lot of people wanted to be a part of. You know, there's certain things that that kick around Hollywood that everybody reads and everyone goes, oh, I want to be a part of that. And for all the reasons that Michael was saying, and it's just really smart. I mean, I love Sorkin dialogue and I love Michael Gunn dialogue. It's really smart. It requires a lot of prep and a lot of energy and a lot of drive to get it right. So it's an exciting challenge. And yeah, I just thought it was brilliant. Weirdly, my husband had worked on a movie called The Reagan Show, which is a documentary about Reagan too. So because I had seen that, and this is a part of that movie. I was also just interested in that and that time period and who Reagan was. Reagan was a really fascinating president.
That is putting it mildly. And for folks who haven't seen the movie yet, Aya plays a reporter, a public radio reporter, a journalist, which Jennifer and I found fascinating because we started in Chicago radio together. So, you know, that side of journalism. But I don't want to say you're the comedic relief here, but you're a little bit like the Greek, or should we say American Icelandic chorus, as you're kind of commenting on things. You're our representative because they're keeping you at arm's length. You're trying to get a story. You're in Iceland. I've seen you, I say sometimes that, you know, you've gotten such a reputation for being able to do comedy as well as drama, but the key to you is like maybe not knowing you're funny, or at least not playing it for laughs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all in the writing. Those circumstances are sort of innately funny. You have a bunch of people outside the room where it happens, right? So they're all just sort of waiting around to get in. And Branka, who plays Raisa, is so brilliant and funny in this film. And you know, she's the one sort of controlling the narrative around the media in this situation. So a lot of it is just reacting to her brilliance. And she made me laugh a lot. But yeah, it's fun to come in and sort of be the outsiders. And then getting to watch the movie. Of course, I wasn't in any of those scenes in the room. Right. So I get to, just like everyone, finally be in that room.
Michael, we're going to get to Mr. Daniels and Mr. Harris and Mr. Simmons in a second. But I want to talk a little bit going off what Aya said, because your script, it is very dense and it's dialogue rich, but a lot of it is two men or three or four men in a room. It could easily be something we'd see off Broadway, right? Did you add the elements with the reporters? And then this kind of, I really enjoyed the rivalry between Reza and Nancy, even though they don't see each other. Was that a kind of a balance you wanted to strike to give people a little bit of a break, just like the leaders themselves needed a break from the talks, from the heavy stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to give the audience a break from, you know, nuclear missiles talking every 5 seconds. And I think, and the other, that was the practical side of it. The creative side of it was that, you know, this really happened. You know, Raisa went on this journey with, you know, dragging the reporters along because they weren't allowed at the summit. And so, you know, she visited all these places around Iceland, and the world press was just following her around to see these things. And so that was the other component of it, was that it was just real. And to be honest with you, a lot of times when I'm looking at true stories, I'm looking for what's weird, what's unusual.
Yeah.
And this was something that was just plain weird. Like, she just took the world press on a tour of Iceland. And so that was funny, and it was dramatic, and it was visual, right? It's got to be visual. And, you know, the thing that I was also trying to convey, and I said this early on to Aya, was that there's a moment for the world press where they are probably for the first time in their experience locked out of something that is this important. And certainly from the American side, right, that the First Amendment lives so large in our lives that it's quite something to not be involved with something of this magnitude. And so I think part of it was trying to convey that the opening monologue that Aya has, that you crushed, you know, that thing is meant to represent what the press must have been feeling, right? That at this moment, the most important thing in the world is happening, and they don't know anything about it.
For both of you, knowing that this was during a time when journalism was, first of all, journalism. I mean, you actually had to have credentials, not just.
Sorry, Jen, but this was a time where the list of the most admired professions after all the president's men, journalists it'd be doctor, teacher, journalist, who now all three seem to be, well, that's a whole other discussion we'll have. But
influencer was nowhere in the mix. But this real time of needing those credentials, and also too having an opportunity to have a gathering that no one else knew about. Like, what an interesting concept. Did that ever kind of go through your mind, Michael, as you were writing it, and Aya as you were acting in it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just from the writing standpoint, it's a very unusual situation to be on this rock in the middle of the North Atlantic that you find yourself in order to cover something that you can't cover. So I don't know, Aya.
I don't know. Maybe there are some more parallels to today of the press being locked out of the room. I mean, there is some cherry picking of who is allowed to be an insider at this point. And so maybe this is the beginning of it.
Yes.
And I'm of two minds. There's some things that can only happen in private, right? These discussions could only happen in private, in the safety of the privacy of this meeting. There's a performance aspect to the presidency, as well as Gorbachev was also a performer. I mean, and so when you have cameras and when you have audience, that changes the way that these men are going to behave, and that changes the tenor of the negotiations. So there was something that needed to happen in that darkness. And so I think, I don't know if they would have trusted each other in the public eye. And then on the other hand, you want to be able to report back and hear what's going on and inform the people. And so that balance, I think, is interesting.
Also the in-person piece. It had to happen in person. You couldn't have done this virtually. You couldn't have done this on, in text or in tweet or in anything. It had to be in person, face to face. Yeah.
Because it's also harder to be horrible to someone face to face, right? Like it's, the problem with online and with all this, is, and going at each other's, whether you think differently about someone or you don't want to sleep with them and decide to tell them online that you don't want to sleep with them for some reason. I get that sometimes. I'm like, you can keep that to yourself. That's okay. But you never go up to someone and say those things. So I think there is a certain aspect of like civility that happens in person when you have to engage with another human.
Yeah, you talk about journalists not be allowed in the room. Sometimes they're locked out of the plane, but again, that's a whole other story. We can talk about how things have changed. Michael, I want to talk a little bit. You guys have mentioned Iceland, and this is actually the house where this took place, which is pretty amazing. And also this cast, Jeff Daniels, Jared Harris. I mean, we're talking, and J.K., three of our greatest actors, generational talents. Can you talk a little bit about the location shoot, but also how you put together that cast? And I got to imagine for you as a director, that's got to be a thrill.
Oh, it was an incredible thrill. Intimidating, terrifying, but also a thrill. And the truth of it is, I came up in TV. You mentioned the newsroom, which I both worked on, and I think that what I learned in coming up in television is that if you hire the right cast, your job gets a heck of a lot easier. And so really, there weren't a lot of notes. There might be calibrations. I would call it calibrations, so dialing something up, dialing it down, and then mainly it's about capturing performance. And so I think that was the directorial process, was hiring the right people and trusting them. In the case of each one of these people that you mentioned, I was a fan for a long time. I knew they could do it. It was a question of, would they do it? Mm-hmm. And it was, and for the most part, I got everybody that I wanted. I got my dream cast. I mean, Aya told the story earlier, but it's all true. Like I've been a fan of hers for so long, and I wrote this for her. And so, and it was the same, the same with JK, it's the same with Jeff. Like it was really just a process of sending fan letters, I guess, or I don't know what they're supposed to call it. But and then the location, I think, gave in a kind of ineffable quality to the production, because it's really tough to shoot. I mean, like, Richard, I mean, you're talking about the North Atlantic. So there's the wind, you've got, the rain, I was outside and, not a lot of, coat in order to like survive out there. And it was for each of them. So nobody was there to have a sunny day on the beach. Everybody was there to tell this story. And that was really profound, including the Icelandic crew, who many of whom lived through it. And it came right down to some of our key crew. Our cinematographer grew up behind the wall in Poland. Wow. So she was talking to the cast about what that was like. And so I think that the location led to a quality of the film that we wouldn't have been able to replicate in any way on the soundstage.
What I admired a lot about your direction too, Michael, is you trust yourself as a writer, you trust your actors, and you trust the material. But you have to have these moments where you're going to do visuals. And we have these beautiful transition shots, and we go to the Blue Lagoon. But what I particularly admired was something that was subtle but conveyed so much. You go to a split screen a couple of times when the men are in the same room. And that's telling us that they're right there, but maybe things are kind of going apart. Can you talk about your approach to that particular technique?
Yeah, we shot it that way with intention to separate them in the frame. And so, and I wanted to convey exactly what you're talking about. So much so that right down to the sound design, that we put the sound on either side of you in the theater so that, it pushed them farther apart. And so, and using that kind of technique, I think, was something that not only conveyed that from the character standpoint, but also hopefully captured the audience's sense of something visually that maybe they don't otherwise see much these days. Magdalena, the cinematographer, and I spent a lot of time talking about, even though this is 1986, we wanted it to feel like a 1970s political thriller. And so that kind of language, that kind of cinema language, was something that we talked about a lot. How you do pop zooms, how you frame things up, and then trying to figure out the way you trace that over the character arcs, right? Bringing Reagan and Gorbachev closer and closer into the frame together, right? And the same thing with Aya and Guy and their characters, Alex and Leo. I set out to tell them from this top, I'm going to shoot you in French overs to start. And then every time we get closer to you, we're going to be in next time is going to be in profile. And finally, we're going to come around to the front where you guys are finally together in a frame in front together. And so all of those choices, I think, were just, maybe they're only for me. I don't know. But subtextually, at least, absolutely, I hope they play.
How did you do? Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yeah, the reporter from NPR in the back has a question.
Yes. The table gets smaller, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the actual table gets smaller? So
Yes.
you would swap out and for those scenes, because I thought that was so interesting. Yeah. And there's these sort of like almost not magical elements because it's all in reality. And then the falling of the picture, and then the table is back to normal size, like so that it plays with your perception about where we're at, and that feeling of when you're talking with someone and you're in a groove with someone and you really start to connect, and then the thing that can immediately. I thought that was very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I told the producers up front that I wanted to do that, and they said, "What? What do you want?" And so, so I told them up front, and luckily, everybody went along with it. But I think that the kindest compliment that I got was, I think, from JK when he saw it. He said, "Oh, you're not just a writer." So that's a director. So that was nice.
I like that. Well, such a full circle moment too, because we've touched on this. I was in a famous scene in the newsroom with Jeff Daniels, where you played the Occupy Wall Street leader who's not a leader. And Hope Davis is also in the newsroom, and she plays Nancy Reagan. And Jeff and Hope did a play on Broadway, and I was nominated for a Tony for her work on Broadway. How about that? All 6 degrees of the Brink of War for you right there.
The Movie of Your Life podcast with Richard Roeper is brought to you by Wayfair Theaters. Wayfair Theaters has 2 locations, one in Highland Park, Illinois, and one in Payson, Utah. For all showtimes, go to wayfairtheaters.com. Not only do they show your blockbusters just around the block, but live events and even live comedy. Remember, wayfairtheaters.com, click on events to find all those special and unique opportunities near you. Well, let's get to some of your movie questions, especially now these are not your movies, and maybe they are, but we always love to kind of pull back the curtain and see which movies inspired you to kind of take you down this path to being where you are now. So, Rich, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, and this will be for both of you. So we'll start with Michael, and then I will jump in. So my first question is simply, is there a movie you remember seeing when you were young, the first movie you saw in a theater that had a huge impression on you?
I mean, I remember Return of the Jedi.
3PO, you tell that slimy piece of worm-ridden filth he'll get no such pleasure from us, right?
I was very, very young. I remember my mom being very angry about it, that my father took me to see that because it was so scary. And I didn't sleep for days or something like that. So I remember that being a very formative experience. And then I think the next one after that was probably, I don't know, probably Red October, maybe. I remember that quite visceral.
Torpedo impact now, 40 seconds. 35 seconds.
Aya, do you remember the first time you were in the audience of a show, maybe a Broadway show, where you got goosebumps and thought, I want to do that?
I remember, I think my mom took me to Othello when I was very young, and I was not very into it, to be honest. But then I saw Suburbia when I was about 14 in some black box theater, and that blew my mind. And I was like, yeah, I could, because that was for me. I was thinking, oh, I can do that. I can be on stage there. Desdemona was still a far way off for me.
You know, the recurring theme we get through the course of this podcast when we talk to people is almost always parents either didn't know about a kid who saw something they shouldn't have seen, or they took their children to see something they weren't ready for. You know, we got a lot of people say, oh, the first movie I saw was The Exorcist. I was 7. And I'm like, well, Children and Family Services should have been called. You know, I think parents sometimes I'll just take it to the movies. What about, here's one that's a little more generic, I guess, the movie-going experience, and this is for both of you. Like, when you go to the movies, do you have a certain spot you sit, and do you have a go-to concession that you always go with?
I like a middle, like if there's a divide from like the bottom to the top and the I like to go maybe one up from the top in the middle if it's an empty theater. I'll also do an aisle if it's super packed. And I definitely, I didn't grow up with money. So my mother would take us to the theater with snacks in her bag, but she would always go to the concession stand. We'd stand in front of it and she'd go, Aya, do you want anything? And I was supposed to say no, and so that we'd get away with sneaking candy in. But of course I would just mess with her and say, yeah, I'd love some Junior Mints. But now that I can afford snacks, I love a Coke with a red vine in it as the straw.
Okay, that'll keep you up.
I love the dead center.
Yeah,
I want to be center. I want to hear exactly where the sound was supposed to go. I want to be as center as I possibly can. And then, in terms of snack, you know, like Aya didn't grow up with a ton of money. My father was also a popcorn maniac. And so I remember being mortified that he would pop popcorn at home because he liked his better and put it in a Ziploc and bring it in. But now, also like I can find a way to buy my own snacks. And there's a new one that I've discovered that I didn't really know existed before. Maybe it's been around forever and I didn't know, but it was a dark chocolate raisinette. And I like, where have these been all my life? And so dark chocolate raisinette and a bottle of water and I'm good to go.
You know, they have these movie theme popcorn buckets now, like, you know, like the Odyssey, they have the 70 millimeter camera and the anniversary of Jaw. I think they should do one for the Brink of War. You could have like a Gorbachev wine stain decanter. and maybe some reindeer kind of theme. Just
Why
a thought.
not?
Just a thought.
Get a reindeer in
I'm trying to help you guys. We got to market this. Got to do this. Jen, go ahead, please.
Okay. Do either of you have a movie that you just absolutely love and have to watch to the end? Maybe people in your circle make fun of you for loving it so completely.
There's a movie that came out, gosh, it was like a Weinstein thing in the 90s or something like that should have been called, the original title was Dancing About Architecture. And they changed it to Playing by Heart. And it's a multi-story in Los Angeles.
I mean, I'm sure that most women don't turn you down on the
Meredith,
first date.
can we talk about something else? Honestly, sex is the last thing on my mind right now.
Okay.
And it's got all these incredible actors in it. Just unbelievable cast in it. Jon Stewart's in it. Gillian Anderson is in it. You know, the Angelina Jolie is in it. Just the list keeps going and going. And I, whenever it's on, I keep trying to figure out why that movie works and why it didn't work for anybody else.
I haven't seen that since it came out. It did everybody. Ellen Burstyn was in there, and you mentioned Madeline Stowe, one of my favorites. Sean Connery shows up. It's like
what is this
who was on the lot that day? Would you want to be in a movie? How about you, Aya? Do you have any kind of guilty pleasure or a movie where you love and people in your life say, why do you love this movie so much?
I save my crappy watching for reality TV. I don't really have like a bad movie. But I was forced when I was in college, my roommate and I, whenever we'd clean our dorm, we would switch off who got to choose the movie. And she forced me to watch a movie called Center Stage. I think I've seen it maybe 20 times. So
you're not improving. I can work harder.
Oh, no matter how hard you work there are certain realities about you as a dancer that we have to face. We can wait till the end of the year when it's time for you to get a job, or we can talk about it now. Why you still have options.
It grew on me in a way that just when you're super familiar with something and it brings back a certain time in my life.
I feel like we're going to do the first double feature ever of Playing by Heart with Center Stage. It'll be the world's shortest film festival, but it'll be a specialized audience. Last question, and thank you so much again for joining us, guys. And I'll start with Michael, so Aya has a chance to make up an answer or really give an answer. Either way is fine. You could visit the set of one movie, any movie in the history of filmmaking, and just be a fly on the wall for an entire day of filmmaking. What would that movie be?
Raiders
of the Lost Ark.
Raiders. I want to see Spielberg in his prime doing his thing, and had to make his days. They were doing it independently, weirdly enough, and how in the world did he do that?
Jones, I'm gonna blow up the Ark, Renee.
I'd go with either Hairspray, the original, or Crybaby. I think I was just a huge John Waters fan growing up, and I would love to be on those sets. And they're just so, also the art direction is so incredible on those. I'd love to sort of live in those sets and see them in person, and the hair and makeup and all that.
The prettiest and most talented girl in school, and yet she socializes with drapes.
We're squares, Allison, and squares gotta stick together.
Yeah, but drapes are people too. They just look different. Maybe Crybaby can sing. Something cool, something hep.
And where did you learn those vulgar jazz words?
That's fantastic. And don't you feel, too, I've only met John Waters. I had the privilege of meeting both of the directors you mentioned briefly, but I feel like John Waters would just be so much fun and so much entertainment on a set, even as he's doing the job. Don't you? I mean, I just get that feeling from how he is and, the way he comported himself whenever you'd see him in public and his movies.
Yeah. And he works with the same people over and over again, which I think is always a good sign for their behavior and his.
Yes. If you want to see these same people again, it does say a lot. Well, listen, thanks so much. The movie is The Brink of War. It's in theaters right now. Michael and Aya, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Don't forget to subscribe and share The Movie of Your Life with Richard Roeper, brought to you by Wayfair Theaters.